Claire, hello. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Hi, Kate. Well, thank you for inviting me.
Well, I know you're super busy at the moment, aren't you? Because you're just about to launch. At the time that we're recording this podcast, you are just about to launch your Grow Wild Outdoors brand.
I
Exciting.
am. I am. Yes, next Thursday I will be on my way to London for the live launch. It's crazy.
So, do you want to start by telling me? Let's start from the beginning. What's your background, and how did you first come up with the idea for a range of outdoor clothing and accessories for pregnant and early motherhood women?
So my background is nothing to do with the clothing industry. I've been working in scientific research for the last 20 years. But I've always been an outdoorsy person. I grew up in West Cork in Ireland and then have been in, like I say, in West Wales for 20 years. And I really, it sort of was when I got pregnant with my daughter in 2019. And it's a first child, and you don't really know what to expect. And I started looking for maternity wear for my lifestyle, and it just wasn't there. And I sort of it was a time of life where, like, there's a lot changing. You're about to become a mother, and life is going to change quite dramatically. Your body is changing, and I found it. Well, hang on, why can't I carry on doing the things that are still really important to me? Whether that's just walking the dog, not even serious hiking, but just getting outdoors and enjoying it. And I felt the clothing shouldn't make that difficult for you. So yeah, I spoke to lots of other similarly sort of outdoorsy women that had been through pregnancy, and they had similar frustrations. So I decided to do something about it.
So when you first had the idea, what was the first thing you did? So you got an idea for this clothing brand, your background's nothing to do with clothing. What was the first thing you did?
I mean, the very first thing I did was a lot of customer research. I think it was May 2020, and I that's when I started. I actually started via Facebook, reaching out to people. I joined all of these different Facebook groups, outdoor mums and ladies that love livestock, and all of these places where outdoorsy women would be. And I just sort of started asking questions about, would anyone be happy to talk to me about their experiences? And I started off with telephone interviews. I spoke to, I don't know, maybe 10 or so people, 10 or 12 people for quite a long time on the phone with a series of questions I'd pulled together. And then from there, I had a sense of what people were thinking. So I put together just a little survey on SurveyMonkey, and I managed to get about 70 odd people to answer that for me. So that really informed then that this was a viable idea, like there was a market for this. People were wanting this. People were dissatisfied with the offers. And then it also informed the sort of products I thought, right, okay, I'll develop this, because I'd seen things like maternity. There was a pair of maternity walking trousers out there, but I didn't particularly like them. They weren't quite what I wanted. So, and when I spoke to people, actually, people wanted just good quality maternity leggings that they could walk in, that weren't going to fall apart at the drop of a hat and had some pockets. So, some of the essentials just weren't there in the quality. So after I sort of knew what I wanted to do, that's when I then turned to Google and started trying to work out, how on earth do you manufacture these things? Again, no contacts in the industry whatsoever. And I found, I don't know, one of the big manufacturers. They have kind of all in-house, from design to manufacture, they've got headquarters in Europe, they've got manufacturing sites in Vietnam. And I just sent them an email going, hello, I'm not even a startup yet, I don't exist, but could I talk to someone? And actually, they were really nice. I had a Zoom call with a lovely lady who, I mean, and they design their making for, some of the big outdoor brands, Fjallraven and things. And she said very nicely, well, we don't really do startups. We kind of take on people who've got £1 million turnover. That's like, okay. But she
Yeah.
recommended a few like places I could look at. She said you could talk to some fabric mills direct, because they'll have, people that they're selling this sort of fabric to. Or she recommended then you could try this design consultancy agency that was based in the UK, and they said they specialized in sportswear and startups. And I thought, well, that sounds perfect. That's, this is what I need. I don't know what I'm doing here, even how to begin. So I contacted them, and that's how my journey started. That was in October then 2020. I signed a contract with them to sort of produce a range. And well, it didn't go quite as we planned, which is why I've been working with you for the last year.
Well, you know, I mean, firstly, all credit to you for doing all that research first, because a lot of people skip out that research stage. So, what was brilliant is you really got to know the customer first and what the customer wanted, and that helped inform your development process you were doing. You know, I'm a big fan of customer research, especially like the fact that you got them on the phone and spoke to them directly.
Yeah, that was
Um,
scary. I found that really nerve-wracking, but, I was very like, I need to be sure that this isn't just me that has this problem and has this idea, because 'cause I've had a million business ideas in the past. But this was one that I thought this
exactly.
stuck with me, and I thought, "No, do you know what? I think this is yeah, this is something that really, like, is a problem for a lot of people, and it shouldn't be."
Hmm. But then turning to Google to try and find some way of getting that product then to come to life and getting it made is also, yeah, it's not uncommon at all. That's what where so many startup clothing brands startup do start.
Yeah.
Um, and the agency that you got in touch with, when you first contacted them, were you under the impression they were going to make everything in the UK? Did they tell you they were going to be making it overseas? What was the deal there?
No, I had thought it was gonna be overseas because, again, I mean, everything, you look at every clothing label and these days, and most of them are, well, made in China or made overseas. So I sort of assumed, well, that was just how you have to do things, especially as a small startup brand. And they very much confirmed that it was very much, well, you need to go to China. Startup brand, that's just how it goes. Your costs aren't gonna work out otherwise. So I said, "Oh, okay, that you're the experts."
Okay, eye
And
rolls for
I
those
know,
listening
yeah,
to the audio.
yeah. But I mean, there's it, the very at that stage, I was very much like, not just inexperienced, but I would almost say a different person back then. This was 3 years ago, and I was much more, well, had much less confidence in my own abilities or my own knowledge, or it was very much, I'd be more willing to defer to somebody who, well, you're the authority in this. Okay, yes, I wouldn't even question it, because I just assume that you, and there's that kind of trust when you've signed up with someone who is positioning themselves as an expert in the industry. That's kind of what you're paying for. So, yeah, I just went along with that.
Yeah, and then what happens? Can you tell us a little bit more about how it went with that agency?
It was hard work, let's just say. I mean, I we had the initial sort of brief and, Zoom call about this, because obviously it was COVID, so there was no meeting people in person, so you're trying to communicate long distance, which is always harder anyway. But, I thought I'd gotten across my kind of, this is my vision, this is what I am, and I'd sent over like a written brief and details and stuff. And I'd say, what was it? I don't know, a month later or something, I got back a pack of designs, and they were just nothing close to what I'd asked for. For one thing, it was like, when it was pink urban yoga wear type stuff, gym stuff, and I was going, no, no, this is an outdoorsy brand. And one item, again, I'd asked for like a quarter-zip fleece design, and I came back with like a roll neck top. So in hindsight, that should have given me some really big warning flags, like, hang on, why aren't you? And now I think if somebody had missed the mark so much that early, I probably would have stepped back or had some very kind of serious conversations about, is this going to work if you can't follow? But they sort of talk, oh, it was a new designer and I'm going to be much more on it now. The boss was like, no, I'm going to be much more in supervising. So we kind of went on and we did get some designs, and then they went forward to prototype stage, again, made in China. And to be fair, I was very happy with the quality of the prototype that came back to me. It was a nice piece. They were, I mean, I started with six six items, because they said, oh, well, really, to be a credible brand when you launch, you need to have at least six different styles. I went, okay. Having initially had the conversation with them, well, I only have this much money, but then
Oh, so you told them that
I
up
did.
front
Yeah, yeah,
then,
yeah,
how
yeah.
much
This
what
is
your
this is
budget
my
was for
budget is, and it was
production.
it was so minimal. Now I look back and now I know more. I'm like, well, in no way I could have afforded to make six stars. I could barely afford their fees, but they were just like, yeah, 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 fine, we'll design six for you. Again, maybe they were expecting me to be able to say, well, no, I've just told you I have this much budget. I can't do that. You've got to do one or two pieces for me. But again, because I was the startup, they were the experts, I went, well, that's what we just have to do. And of course, at that point, I didn't have any insight into how much it was actually going to cost, either from a development point of view, or they'd given me their fees. So I knew how much they would charge, but I had no idea how the costs rack up when you're developing prototypes, couriers, raw materials, you're paying for that sampling. There's so much cost and I look at the bank statements and go, gosh, so much money just went into that.
Yeah.
And you know, and then like say with COVID anyway, and all the stuff in the world that's been changing in the last few years, costs just started to spiral from raw materials to shipping, you know, and then we had the COVID shutdowns, particularly in China, where it was just like drop of a hat, there goes a whole, not just a whole factory, but the whole region is just being shut down. So it was like worrying. I was getting, you know, we had more hiccups and more problems that we solved along the way.
Did
It was
they
a
give
learning
you
curve.
did they at any stage, did they give you an indication of what the minimum order quantities would be per style of these 6 styles?
Oh, I I think they did give some insight, but again, it wasn't really big because I still didn't know what it would cost to make it. So it was a bit, you know, I couldn't really work it out as it were going looking forwards because you know with no context, at least coming into the industry totally new, you know, and they were always very reluctant to give sort of solid information. And I understand that they didn't want to put, you know, give me a number that then they couldn't stick to because the markets fluctuate. But it was very hard saying, "Look, well, I need a ballpark. I need something, you know, that I can then work with because it's very hard to make decisions if you don't have all of the information, you know." So what it was being asked to make a decision on something. And then, you know, how many months later you get the cost and the
The true
outcome and the results.
cost.
And then you've put so much in down the line and it sort of felt like, well, oh, here's the bill. Is that okay? And I felt a bit like, well, it has to be, doesn't it? Because otherwise, how do I proceed? You know, I didn't feel like I had any other options at that point. It was sort of that, I think, was it the sunk cost fallacy where you've put so much in, so you better
Yeah.
just keep going, keep going. And it did. It was like that for, like say, 2 years, I think it was with them.
Gosh. And
Yeah.
how much was that bill then? Go on, tell
Oh,
us.
what? Like total, how much I sunk into the,
It would have no, how much
or
would it
how
have
much would
been
my
if you'd
bulk
have
order?
placed yeah,
40 grand.
how much would it 40 grand, yeah.
Mm. That was 25% more than I got a quote in the summer. And then like 2 months later, it was 25% higher. It came up to 40 grand. I was like, well, that extra 8 grand, that was my shipping budget that I still don't actually know what it should be because no one can give me any hint as to what it could be. Yeah, I mean, it was kind of it was it was the sort of nail in the coffin, really. After a long, you know, I'd been progressively more concerned over the year going, and I'd said to them, look, could we, because at one point we had to switch factories because I don't know. I still don't know to this day, but I just got an email saying, we've had a problem with the factory. We can't go ahead with that one, but we found you another one. And at that point, I did say, well, can we look at factories in Europe instead? You know, these are my concerns about China from a business point of view, from a transparency point of view, because again, I felt like there's no way I can visit a factory in China. I do not have the budget right now for factory visits to China as much as I would like to. So I had no real transparency. Again, still relying on what somebody else was saying. You know, I'd say, well, can you tell me about this factory and what are the standards? And, you know, because I'm actually a quality assurance auditor and they just go, oh, it's very good. Yes, it's been audited. And I'm
Yeah.
sitting there going, to what are we talking here? What are we measuring this against? Because just saying it's a very good
What
factory.
audits, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So it was, you know, from a sort of business point of view, supply chain, logistics, ethics, transparency, I was kind of really going, I'm not happy with China. But when I sort of suggested it, they said, oh, we don't think you can afford Europe. It's too expensive for you. You can't, you know, you margins won't work and da 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 da. So I went, okay, well, because again, I don't know what it costs to manufacture in Europe. So I'm trusting when they say, oh, it'll cost twice or 3 times as much. I go, okay, well, there we go then. I'm still stuck on this path. But yeah, like I say, we got to the October and I went, I'm pulling the plug.
Oh, and that was when, like, can you remember how you then found me and the British Brand Accelerator?
I think it was after several weeks of Googling manufacturers again, because I was kind of back to square one again. Not quite square one because I had tech packs. I had my actual prototypes. But in terms of, yeah, finding all the raw materials, finding a manufacturer, getting into the industry, I had absolutely nothing to go from. And that is the trouble with using, you know, a consultancy, because into their contract was built like, you know, you can't use any of our suppliers for I don't know, something like 2 years after our agreement ends, unless we agree in writing and everything else. And it was no good to me because all the suppliers were in the Far East anyway. I didn't, I'd already decided that wasn't the option for me. So no, I Googled many things, manufacturers in the UK and fabric supply and things. And then I can't remember how, because again, I was looking at, I don't know, 20 tabs at a time every night, trying to pick my way through stuff. And then your website popped up and I went, please let this be something I can use.
I remember. And you sent me a message, something like, "Can I speak to you this afternoon? I'm desperate." And I couldn't believe the whole story. Well, actually, I could believe the story because I've heard this so many times before. And I suppose the good point thing was, Claire, you did decide to pull the plug at that
Yeah.
time. You could have, like, said,
Oh,
continue throwing good money after
yeah.
bad
Yeah.
and pay this 40,000 plus,
Mm.
because it probably would have gone up
Oh,
from the
vastly more.
40,000 to get these 6 items made.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so then we met and you joined the British Brand Accelerator, and I introduced you to some UK factories. Unfortunately, you had to start again with your patents, didn't you? Because the agency owned the patents.
Yeah. The
Part of their
factory
agreement
did.
was sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
So
I
you
had
had
no
to start
idea.
again.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then can you tell me what your experiences have been working with the UK factories now compared to the experience you had before?
But I love it. It's I had no idea. When I remember one of the first factories I sort of got in contact with, and they were much like, oh, well, yeah, yeah, you can come. Because I didn't even know you could come and visit factories, really. It was all this sort of like, you're allowed to do that. And
And
they were
Kate's
like,
going, "Go to the
go to
factory,
the
go to the
factories. Like, oh,
factory."
okay. Yeah, and they were like, yeah, well, if you come over, we can put a sample together, like there in front of you while you wait. And I was like, what? Like, what? You can do this in that time? Because obviously I've been waiting 3, 4, goodness knows how many months for each sample. I mean, I think I had, over 2 years, I think we had like 3 rounds of samples. It took that long to get that.
That's
And so I
mad.
just assumed, yeah, sampling just takes 2 to 3 months at least. And it was so this idea of like, yeah, well, if you just bring all your stuff and we'll just put it together for you. It's like, what? So yeah, the speed at which you can do things, when you're actually on the ground, but the progress you make as well by being face to face, and whether that's from label design, because my labels are all being made down the road from me in Pembrokeshire, so that's been brilliant. So I was able to nip down because I had a phone call and a couple of emails, and I just said, "Oh, look, I'll just come down." And then we were able to go through all the options. I was able to, because again, I don't know the terminology still, or I do now because I'm getting learned a lot in 12 months. But I'm just kind of going, I wanted to look like this, and he was like, "Oh, well, these are all the ways we could do that." I'm like, "Oh, this is brilliant. There's no way I could have got to that just talking to someone remotely. It's just not possible. Sometimes you need to be able to sit around a table and kind of point at things." And that's the same for, when it's like my sample of my maternity and nursing tops. I'm able to go down and literally make decisions on the spot. And they're saying, well, how wide do you want this hem stitch? And do you want it this or do you want it this? And I'm saying, oh, okay, right. Let's try it. Why should I have it like this? What do you think? Because you can have all that detailed conversation that, again, it's just impossible to when you're working remotely. So between the sort of efficiency and the ability to move forwards without wastage is amazing, but also that relationship building and like it's a totally different experience. Now I have this sort of my little network of people I'm working with, and your sort of ability to send someone like a little WhatsApp message and they take a picture and they ping it back to you. And, people have been really like so incredibly helpful, like supportive. I think that's the thing. I never felt supported before. There was just, somebody was doing a job for me and I was paying them and they were producing something. Whereas this feels very different. I'm able to build relationships with people and we're working together is how it feels, which is amazing.
Brilliant. And how have the prices, the big question is the prices then, and the order quantities you've had to place, how has that differed with the UK factories compared to what you were getting through the agency you were working with the Chinese factories?
Oh, well, I mean, from Well, I haven't had to take out a massive bank loan, which is not a small thing. I can fund it myself because,
Win-win.
oh, yeah, exactly. I mean, that's a massive thing, because I was going to take out this big bank loan. And, then you have to think, well, now I've got to make loan repayments every month. So that's real pressure on your sales and your overheads and everything else to be able to make that. Whereas now, because I can start with much smaller order quantities, I mean, I've cut the range down again to a smaller size. So I kind of pivoted the whole business model really in a way because I'm manufacturing my items here, and I've started with 3 items. I've got another 2 sort of in development, and then I'm filling in the gaps now. So I've got a range of other brands products. So I've sort of got brands that either like I have experience with their products, I use them myself, I know how good they are, or they're brands that have similar value. But in terms of the costs, then therefore my costs have gone down a lot because I am in much more in control. I can say, right, I want, I think I can sell this many. I'm gonna work out because I think that was one of the things was a real the first I think first time when you said, look, well, if you've got 200 items, how are you finding those first 200 customers? Because it's very much the sort of like, oh yeah, well, here's your 200, 300 pieces. That's just you just need to start. That's just what you launch with. That's what you start with. And it wasn't until I was in touch with you and you were like, well, literally, how are you going to find those people? And it was like, well, I have my marketing plan, but I don't quite know how it's going to translate from my 0 where I am now into 300 people. And that's where I was struggling with the numbers when I was doing my own forecasting and looking forward and thinking, between the big lead times you had in China and the big order quantities. So I was sort of going, well, if I sell this many this month, then in order to restock again, because the lead time's so long, I need to put out another huge quantity of money to bring that in again with all of the shipping costs, the customs fees, the commission fees from the agency. And I was going, I'm running out of money. My sales might be good, but I'm still running out of money because I had to put so much out. Whereas now it's totally different. I've got a really nice, tight little supply chain, short lead times, very flexible quantities, everything, even when I've been like every bit I've been thinking about supplying, whether that's the fabric or labels, trims, I've been really able to think about what's the least amount I can get? Can I sort of test the waters? If I want 10 meters of of a color, I can produce 8 tops in that color, test the waters with it before I have to commit to buying 50 meters at a time. So it's a totally different sort of scale. But again, with everything, there's the potential to scale up as well. Again, I made sure that they're not just only able to supply 10 meters. I can then go, right, now I can buy bulk. So it's that kind of, you're able to have a lot more control over your cash flow, I think, doing it here, doing it like this.
Yeah. So the actual cost prices then, so
Cost
back to the
prices.
original question,
Yeah, I
have
know.
they
I went off on a
been
tangent.
vast? They have, but that's good because actually what you've explained there is the true cost of making something. It's not
Yeah.
just the cost price.
Mm-mm.
It's all those different things on top that make the real difference, not having
Yeah.
to spend a lot of money on stock, which is what I always teach everyone that
And I think that's the
that I
thing
work
that
with.
can kill your
Don't just look at the
business.
cost price.
No, it's not just
Yeah.
about the cost price because it's all well and good saying, okay, so let's see cost price, right? So for my leggings, I was looking at about, let's get this right, £22, I think, as a cost price, but that did not include the shipping to get to me or the customs fee
That's
or the
the freight on
10.
board, as
That
they call
was,
it, the
yeah,
ex-factory
yeah,
price.
just ex factory price. Yeah. The cost of them making it and me paying for that. So raw materials and making, but not shipping, not customs, not commission from my agency. I'd estimated
Oh,
kind
that
of,
didn't include the
no, there was
commission.
a 10% commission every order you placed. There was going to be an extra 10% of whatever that order was to pay to them. So it was going to be an
So
ongoing
it's not to their
payment. It's not to their advantage
so
to
it's
have you
not to
go
their
off independent.
advantage,
No, 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 no. It's a nice
but it's
little,
also not to their it's also not to their advantage to get you a really good competitive cost price, because if they're making 10% of it, they're not gonna wanna lower that cost price, are they?
no,
Because
no, no.
they've
It's
got
in
you
their
over a
interest
barrel
to
there.
get you the best fabrics, the most pricey custom dyes, the most amazing molded trims in fancy this, that. Yeah, yeah. I mean, which sounds great. And it is, you want to produce a quality item, but because you don't have the again, the transparency on what all of the actual options are. And yeah, it's just, this is what it costs. This is the price. Do you want it? Yes or no? So yeah, whereas like I say, so I mean, I'm trying to remember now. I mean, you could be talking, and then of course shipping to the actual customer and packaging. So there was, there's always so much else that goes on. So I'm not convinced that there's going to be much difference actually when it comes down to it. I think I can't remember the final costing I had on my Chinese leggings, but yeah, 22 quid was the factory price. Well, and by the time you add on everything else, and like I say, I still don't know what shipping could have been. The prices were absolutely crazy and fluctuating wildly. So yeah, in terms of sheer money, I think actually my margins are gonna be better making here, which is crazy. Really. People
Is it
say, "Oh,
crazy
no, you
though,
have to
Claire?
go."
It's not crazy.
It seems to be crazy, though. That's what people think, no way, because I've been asked that, by people, because 'cause I've met a couple of people who are also starting sort of maternity brands, kind of different, underwear and stuff. And they say, they're making overseas, and they're saying, "Well, but what about your margins? And have you, managed to," and you go, "Well, yes, because otherwise, I was like saying that there was a lot of, in the run up and going, well, it must be doable because people do it. But I've also been a little bit, it has been concerned because I'm doing maternity wear, and there's still that perception that, oh, well, you only wear it for a couple of months. Whereas, because maternity fashion is the worst for fast fashion, disposable, throwaway stuff. And that was one of the things I hated about it. It wasn't just that I couldn't find outdoorsy clothing. It was that everything I picked up, the quality was horrible. It was flimsy. It was, it was horrible to put on. It felt horrible against your skin. As soon as you did, get active and get sweaty, it just felt disgusting because the fabric was not good quality and it wasn't put together well. And I hated that. I don't like buying wastage. I'm the sort of person that buys an item of clothing and has it for 20 years until it's falling apart. I would much rather, and I probably bought it secondhand when I did buy it. So for me, it was like, no, I would much rather create a quality piece. I've built in design. So like a lot of my stuff is, the tops aren't just for pregnancy, they've got breastfeeding capacity as well. But again, they're good enough quality that they'll last you for more than one pregnancy, or they will, be in good enough condition that you can gift them to somebody else, or you can resell them as a secondhand piece. I was like, I'd much rather create something that can turn into a secondhand market. I think that's much more eco-friendly than going, well, I'll just buy a £15 pair of leggings made in a sweatshop.
Yeah.
So, I can't even remember what the beginning of this question was, but
I think
but
you're making
yes.
some really good points there, though, about the quality and the fact that you've been able to. I know you've worked very hard with the factories to make sure that the quality is exactly where you need it to be, so that, like you say, you could then pass it down. You could use it for your second, third, fourth pregnancy
Yeah.
if you had one. Let's not pretend that there haven't been challenges along the way, because it's never
No.
plain sailing, is it, when it comes to product development?
No, it's
So what
not, no.
challenges have you had since you've been working with the UK factories, and how have you overcome them?
So, I think one of the first challenges was related to price. So for example, with one factory, again, we're working on the leggings, and we got sort of so far down the path, and then it was, well, this is what I'd want to charge you for, as a cost price for making these. And I went, oh, that is not, it's not anywhere near what I was hoping. It was about twice what I was hoping for or aiming for with my costings. So that was difficult. And it kind of highlighted to me, though, that actually, e there's, on the one hand, you can't ask a factory to give you a price until they have made some samples, because your garment is different. The fabric is different, and how difficult that is to work with the machines depends on that fabric and the way you put it together, the way the seams come together. I've actually got quite a technical set of leggings. They're not sort of just bog standard stitch them up. They have been really challenging to get to come together nicely, because I've tried to fit them really well underneath a bump and scoop around. Some of the seams are like impossible. And the fabric I'm using is a heavyweight fabric, which again is a nightmare for the machines. So I have a better appreciation of actually how complex it is to make a good quality garment when you're asking for, all of these specifications to be hit. But what it did highlight was, it's sometimes it's better to have that conversation a bit earlier rather than say, get 3 or 4 samples down the line and then start talking about prices. Even if, I mean, your manufacturer might not be comfortable or particularly keen on talking about price, but to just say, look, I'm not going to hold you to anything, but I need some sort of ballpark figure. This is where, and this is why then, well, I've been talking to other manufacturers down the line, kind of this first conversation, again, in person or on the phone or whatever you can do, say, look, this is where I'm looking at. This is sort of my ballpark. This is what I'm hoping for in terms of my budget. Is that something that's actually feasible for you or not? Because there's no point in wasting your time and my time if it's not. And that's been, the way some people have said, oh no, I'm looking at, it would cost me 30 or 50 or more pounds to make these. And I say, well, that's fine. I can't afford that. So I've got to try and make a new plan or, look elsewhere or so, communication is really, really key, I think, and being transparent, even if it's a bit uncomfortable, because no one likes to talk about money.
Yeah, that's such a good point. It's true, even if it's uncomfortable. And I always make everyone, and I made you do this, work out your costings before you know your manufacturing
Yeah.
price, but after you know what your target retail price is,
Mm.
so you know what you're aiming for. So you're not on the spot if a manufacturer does it in the other direction and asks you what your target cost price is.
Yeah.
Some do, some don't. So that you're not stuck for what to say, but you've got a rough indication of
Yeah.
what you're aiming for. So
Yeah.
everyone's got their cards on the table.
That's it. Because
Yeah.
at the end of the day, you want the job to work and you want it to go, but it's got to be viable for everyone. And if it's not, then things have got to be, you've got to rethink it. Yeah. And I was like working at the cost sheet, I remember initially, but I was going, but I don't know all the answers. How can I fill this in? But, once you've started, you get all the bits of information slowly. Once you've got the fabric cost worked out. But then now for me, because one of the things you need to be able to put in is obviously, well, how much fabric do you use? So how much is it going to cost you to make? So that took some interesting maths because I was like, I have literally no idea how many meters of fabric go into a pair of leggings. And you're sort of trying to do Google. That's not very helpful. But because I had my prototypes from China, and they were like a similar weight fabric. So I was just literally weighing them and then going, right, well, if that
Very
is
smart.
320 GSM and this weighs 370 grams, then it must be this much fabric has gone into it. So then I was having to translate that into, well, this is my fabric width of this fabric I've chosen. So how much length? So yeah, there's a little bit of like maths and guesstimations and things going into it, but it's doable, and that's the thing is then you are going in informed with an idea of, what you need to hit. Because yeah, at the point at which they said £25, I was going, I can't, that's
Yeah.
not going to work. Whereas otherwise, if I hadn't done that, I could have said, oh, okay, yeah, okay. And then it wasn't until you get much further down the line and you start to panic.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So, Claire, what advice would you give anyone else in the same position that you were in 3 years ago? Think
Mhm.
back when you first had this
Right,
idea
yeah.
and you didn't know where to start. What advice would you give anyone that was in that position? 3 tips.
Oh, 3. Oh, not just rambling. Okay, let's see. 3 tips. Well, I think my first tip is always going to be the customer research. You need to make sure that this is a product that is wanted by people, because if not, then it's just a dream and it's not going to go any further. I remember seeing something. I think it was something that went on Dragon's Den years ago, and it was somebody had designed a little cap that you could put on the end of a cucumber to keep it fresh. And it kind of got to it, and everyone just went, well, "Why don't you just cut the end of the cucumber off? Like you don't need to buy a product to keep your cucumber fresh." And I thought, oh no, all of the work that's gone into that. So you don't want to do that. You don't want to get to the point where you're launching something and no one actually wants it. So that is really comes down to just talking to people. Try and find your market, put yourself out there really uncomfortably, phone people, text people, email people, badger them to complete surveys for you. You've got to, and I did a lot of reading beforehand as to how to do that as well. So some books about, about doing customer research and how to design a survey and not do leading questions so that people say what you want them to say, not what they actually think. So it's all definitely customer research, 100%. Then I think the other thing then does thinking about taking that step from the people and the product and looking at the market and the margins and the numbers. I mean, I've got so many spreadsheets because it is difficult because if you're trying to work out, well, I don't know how much it costs to make something, but you can kind of see, well, other people have done it, so it must be feasible because businesses do exist in your sector. In my turn, of like maternity wear, it must be possible to make affordable maternity wear because people are doing it. But at the same time, what could the market for my special product be? You've got something that is unique, or there's a reason you're doing it. But how many people can you actually target? How many bits do you need to sell to make this affordable? And how are you going to do it? Are you going to do something which is, low cost and you've got to sell vast numbers, or are you going for the sort of product that's a high value product and you need to sell less maybe, but maybe you have less people to target in the first place? So it's really thinking about what is your strategy, what is your business model here, how are you actually gonna do this? When it comes to actually making it happen, then I say, other than saying, sign up with Kate and make it British,
Ah.
but I think that's it. You have got to find experts for mentors or supportive people around you. It does help when you've got people you can bounce ideas off. If you're already in the industry and you're just sort of taking something on to do for yourself, maybe it's easier, but even then, still having a business mentor or something, because it is hard work, and it's very easy when it's just you to get stuck in your head and things are going round and round and round at 3 a.m. And to be able to have someone where you can bounce it off and go, help if you need, is really valuable. I can't tell you the amount of times I've gone like, let's get Kate on Slack, I've got an issue. And it's knowing that you have that moral support as much as anything, it does make a big difference.
Brilliant. And so on that note then, what have you found has been the biggest benefit to you of being in the British Brand Accelerator?
Oh, there's so many. um, I'm going to say that the the biggest is I'd say sometimes it's my mindset has changed since I've met you, and it's being thinking about from everything from when you should just bootstrap it and give it a go. Because again, I was very much like, well, I don't know how to do that. I better pay someone to do it for me, to do it properly. Whereas now, you kind of encourage people to, well, just give it a try and see if you can save some money or here, or don't just go for the most expensive option necessarily. See if there's an alternative way to do it. So like, I'm building my own website now. I was going to pay $8,500 for somebody to build my website. That's what it was. So I was quoted to do an e-commerce website and design and all of that. And I'm sure it would have been great. But actually, do you know what? And I thought, I can't do website design. I have no idea what I'm doing. I have loved every minute of building my own website, and I've saved $8,500. And I wouldn't have gone down that path again if I hadn't sort of, I think, been part of the Make It British and gone, well, just, give it a try. You know your business. You know what you want to say and what you want to do. And whether that's then the kind of confidence to, like, say, go and visit factories and have those conversations and, get the information. You need the information. So, ask for it, do it. But then also that, like, from a practical point of view, like, I don't see that I would be anywhere near having products ready to go if it hadn't been signing up with you, because the network that you have built and all the people that you've introduced me to, and even if like somebody you've introduced me to hasn't been able to necessarily help me, they have usually given me another contact to follow, or another contact. And there's so many, there's multiple manufacturers or people that I've spoken to have said, oh, I wouldn't normally do a job like this or this size, but because you've come from Kate, let's have a chat. And that people really like,
Aw.
you can't do that. Yeah. Like say my tops, the manufacturer, I'm doing such tiny quantities. And he was sort of, their initially, if you look on their website, it's like 50, minimum order of 50 pieces per size. And I was like, oh God, that's like, if I want to launch 5 sizes, 250 items, it's like China quantities again. I don't want to do that. So if I'd been on my own, I wouldn't have ever even contacted him. But, because I was with you, you said, well, let's give him a shout. And he said, oh, well, yes, okay. Because you've come through Kate. And then, we've got to the point where he's sort of said, look, well, it's not efficient for me to do tiny quantities, but I want to help you get off the ground. So you tell me what you want and I'll just make it. Which is makes a big difference.
And he can see though, Claire, as I can see, that you're definitely going places,
I
and
hope
Grow
so.
Wild Outdoors is going to be amazing. So at the time that this podcast goes out, you're actually launching this weekend at the baby show.
Yes.
So
Yes,
when
because I'm trying
people
to think,
listen
when
to
are we
this,
I'll be in
you will
London.
be at the baby show,
Yeah.
which is going to be where you're launching.
Yeah.
Exciting. How are you
It
feeling
is.
about that?
I am really excited. I cannot wait. I mean, like I say, you probably guessed, I really like talking to people. So I'm really looking forward to being able to actually, yeah, get there and have stuff, because it's been so much like this build up and talking about it, 3.5 years of planning and discussing, and actually to have products like ready and look, I made this is amazing. So I'm really looking forward to it. I've done, again, so much planning. I have a list that's about a mile long, and it's all being planned with military precision, down to like, right, we need to get here, and then I can fold this, and this needs to be hung up, and I've got the hooks to hang that up, and I've got the Velcro for this, and I'm trying to imagine every step. But I went to the baby show back in May when it was being run in the NEC, so I scouted it out on foot, and I went on the Friday, so it was relatively quiet, so I was able to chat to all of the exhibitors that were there, and I basically said, look, I'm planning to exhibit at the next one. Can you give me some tips? Or can I take some photos of how you put your stand up? So is literally me like taking photos of how people have hung posters and the brand of lights they're using. So, which is really helpful, because now, 5 months down the line, I'm sort of Googling on my phone going like, where do I get that from? And how many hooks do I need? And I'm counting the size of the racks that I need to hang my clothing on and ordering it. But I think it's going to make
That's
my life a lot
good. You're
easier.
prepared.
I'm feeling very
Yeah.
prepared. Yeah, I am. Yeah, I mean, there's still I've got this many X number of days left, and whether I can physically get all of the things done that need to be done. But I'm also not stressing myself out. I'm trying to, not like it will, we'll get all the essentials done. If it's not absolutely perfect, it will be good enough. That's the other thing I've taken from, I think, from the British Brand Accelerator, is good enough and out there is a better starting point than perfect, but it never happens.
Exactly. Done is better than perfect.
Yeah.
So where can everyone find you then, Claire? If they want to check you out online, they want to buy your products for themselves because they're pregnant, or for a friend as a gift, how can they find you?
So I am www.growwildoutdoorwear, or one long word.com. I'm sure you'll put a link somewhere in the description, or
I will
like a
definitely put a
that's
link,
it.
and
Yeah,
to your
yeah. At the
Instagram.
moment, I am, yeah, and I'm just thinking about the timings of when this goes out. I'm running a giveaway as well to celebrate our launch. So you can either, that will be on the homepage of growwildoutdoorwear.com, or also you can have a look and you'll be able to find it if you look at me on Instagram. My Instagram handle is Grow Wild Outdoorwear. So yeah, if you've got, any pregnant ladies in your lives that might like a nice bundle of beautiful, beautiful clothing, mum and baby, I've got a little bundle going on. So I kind of tailoring it to depending on what stage of motherhood people are at. So it's not just purely pregnancy, or, so it's a nice little bundle anyway. And that's where you can find me.
Brilliant. Claire, you've been an amazing guest, and I can't wait to watch your brand grow. Excuse the pun, to watch Grow Wild Outdoorwear grow over the coming months and years. Amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much for having me. It's been amazing.
Bye.
Bye.